Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. My name is Julie Shields Rutina, and I'm the Director of College Planning at MEFA. And we have a terrific panel here with us tonight, and I'm just so happy. There's a lot to share, and we want to talk about opportunities for fall 2021 for students. And so if you are a student, or if you're a parent of a student, or if you know other students who particularly maybe haven't made a whole lot of plans yet this year, or maybe are still a little up in the air about plans, this has been such a different year, as we all know. We're here tonight to share that there are still lots of choices, lots of opportunities for the fall, and still time to put any of those plans in place. So let me first introduce our panelists, and then we can get started. I am recording this webinar, and so we'll send the recording tomorrow. You should also know that you can use the question and answer, use the chat, and we will hopefully, make this a discussion, and we want to answer your questions. So that should work out well. And if we have anything else to share, we'll put that in the chat as well. All right. So let me introduce our panelists. First, I'll introduce Ryan Forsyth. He is the Vice President for Enrollment Management at Worcester State University. Ryan has worked in enrollment management for over 15 years in admissions and financial aid at both public institutions, private institutions, universities, a community college, Massachusetts schools, and one institution in Tennessee. And then I will introduce Iris Godes, who is the Associate Vice President of Enrollment and Dean of Admission at Dean College. She's been working in higher education for 33 years. She's worked at 5 different institutions throughout her career, ranging from very large universities to small colleges, both public and private, 2-year and 4-year, and both highly selective and more inclusive. And then we have Clantha McCurdy. She's Senior Deputy Commissioner of Access and Student Financial Assistance at the Massachusetts Department of Higher Education. She oversees the Massachusetts Office of Student Financial Assistance, where she manages all of the staff and implements all of the new programs and policies. She's also the legislative contact for inquiries that come before the state legislature. And she serves on a number of committees where there's an overlap of research, planning, and data collection from all public and private colleges in Massachusetts, as well as on other committees focusing on students' transition from high school to college. And last, but certainly not least, we have Robert Days, and he has served as the statewide director of Gear Up Massachusetts for 12 years, during which the program has successfully competed in 2 grant competitions. Gear Up Massachusetts is a federally funded discretionary grant program designed to increase the number of low-income students who are prepared to enter and succeed in post-secondary education. Gear Up Massachusetts serves over 6,500 students throughout the Commonwealth and operates in 7 cities. And Robert brings over 28 years of experience in the arenas of teaching, educational leadership, curriculum development, and management. So as you can see, we have just a whole lot of knowledge and expertise here to share with you and talk with you. So I think the way we're going to start the conversation is to have Ryan and then Iris talk about all of the opportunities that are still available for students for the fall. And Ryan will cover that from a public institution perspective, and Iris will cover that from a private college perspective. And then we're going to talk about funding and financing and financial aid, because of course that's always a huge concern when planning for education after high school. And so Clantha is going to take us through a lot of the resources and the financial aid available, both at the federal level, at the state level. So we'll hear a lot about that. And then Robert will talk about all of the ways that you can avail yourself of resources and help in putting together a plan. So students, again, it's not too late. There are so many ways that you can reach out and get help on the application process, on financial aid applications, and on just in the way you're thinking about this. So with that, I will turn it over to you, Ryan, to start us off.
Thank you, Julie, and good evening, everyone. I hope everyone is enjoying your rainy day. I am watching this rain, thankfully, fertilizing my lawn out there. So I'm thankful for it. I hope you are too. There is sunshine in a rainy day. Tonight, some of the topics that we want to cover are exactly where we are in April as we prepare for those April showers. We are in late April, and for some of you, it is late April in a senior year. Perhaps for some of you, it's late April in a junior year. Or perhaps you are thinking about returning to college, or you are thinking about transferring colleges. At any rate, there are a great number of opportunities that still exist in post-secondary education for you in the spring. So we are going to run through a few of the topics that Julie just mentioned, and we're going to start with the fact that opportunities continue to exist even in late April and going into May and June and into the summer to apply to colleges and universities throughout the Commonwealth and beyond. We have great information that tells us that most institutions, especially your public institutions in Massachusetts, continue to take applications for students that wish to enroll in both the summertime terms as well as this coming fall. So if you are a senior or you are a transfer student or an adult looking to return to school, your state universities, your community colleges, and your UMass campuses continue to offer the opportunity for students to apply right now, today, for entrance for the fall semester. Now we are getting a little further along in the process, right? Some of your, if you're a senior, you've heard some of your classmates have already applied and perhaps been accepted to colleges. But that doesn't mean that you should be shying away from applying to college if you haven't done so right now. We do want to always encourage students to apply as early as possible for admission to college. That gets you priority consideration for a number of different things. It can get you priority consideration for the major that you want to study. It could get you priority consideration for financial aid, which Iris is going to talk about in just a few moments. It could get you priority consideration for housing opportunities on the campus. And so we do want to encourage you to apply as soon as possible, but those opportunities have not been exhausted yet in April and in May. The opportunity continues to exist now to apply for admission. And that's not just reserved to public institutions, private institutions as well. Iris in a moment will have a good deal of information for us about where some of the private institutions inside and around Massachusetts are, where there's continues to be opportunities to apply as well. Regarding financial aid, those opportunities continue to exist as well. It's important to note that the primary financial aid application that you will complete, no matter which institution you decide to attend in the fall, is going to be the free application for federal student aid, the FAFSA. That application is available to you right now and will remain available to you all the way through your academic year next year. Now, just like with admission applications, we always want to suggest that you apply earlier rather than later. So if you have not completed your FAFSA, now's a great time to do so. But that doesn't mean, again, that you have necessarily been kicked out of being considered for financial aid. That opportunity continues to exist for you to apply for financial aid right now. Now, with many of our students that are considering enrolling in college for this coming summer or this coming fall, we're coming up on a pretty important date. I think many of you have probably heard of the May 1st National Candidates Reply Date. This is a generally understood date where many students are declaring which institution that they've been accepted to they actually want to attend, right? Many students are accepted to 2 or 3 or 4 different colleges, and that gives you the opportunity to make a choice. Which institution do you want to attend? And May 1st is very often the date that colleges and universities identify and encourage you to make that decision by May 1st. May 1st is just a couple days away. However, as we've said just a moment ago, and we'll continue to say tonight, you still have the opportunity to apply, and you still have the opportunity to commit to whichever college or university you decide that you want to go to. Regarding financing your education, you also have the opportunity to continue to follow the financial aid paths that your various colleges set out for you. So if you have been accepted to 1 or 2 or 3 colleges, or perhaps you're going to be applying to a college or a university soon, you'll likely be offered information about financial aid. One of those options may be to complete your financial aid application and provide information to your college or university. That's called verification. And if that happens, we want to encourage you, even now, even in late April or early May, to follow those verification guidelines that your college and university set out for you. Complete those verification steps now so that you're able to be further considered for financial aid as we go into May and June. Now, there's a few things going on in higher education, some of which the media has been covering heavily lately, and you might have heard of some of them. This is, for instance, the way in which colleges and universities are reacting to the ongoing pandemic. How are colleges and universities keeping students safe? How are colleges and universities assuring that students or considering whether students should be vaccinated against COVID-19? All of those things are things that more than likely you or your student are considering as they're considering which college you might want to attend. Just a couple of days ago, in Massachusetts, the public universities and colleges, the public universities just came out to declare that students attending a Massachusetts State University or a Massachusetts University of Massachusetts campus will be required to be vaccinated prior to enrolling in September. That's something that's specific to certain schools, but not all schools. We've also heard from Northeastern and Boston University and other institutions that are requiring that vaccination, but that's something you'll want to pay close attention to because not all colleges right now are requiring that vaccine. Only some are. And if that's an important criterion for you to decide which institution you wish to attend in the fall, you'll want to pay real close attention to what your college is requiring of you. The same goes for what options your college will be offering as far as modalities for learning. Many colleges are used to offering instruction in person, right? You go to your campus and you walk through those brick-laden buildings and through the ivy and into the classroom, and there's the lecturer in the front of the room. Well, with COVID, there's a great deal of hybrid learning and online learning going on. So you'll want to pay close attention to what your campuses are planning for the summer and the fall, because again, that may affect your decision as you decide where you want to attend this coming fall. There's a great deal more information to share with you, but we have a great panel tonight that wants to share even more information. And so I'm going to hand it off to Iris Godis, who's going to be able to share information with us, more information, including information from the perspective of private institutions.
Iris.
I know, unmute,
Yeah.
unmute. All this time and I still don't quite have it, but I caught myself. So welcome everybody, glad you could join us tonight. Again, I'm Iris Godis. I'm at Dean College. I'm here representing the private or the independent college sector in Massachusetts, where you have much more variety of thought and plans and types of institutions than with our public system. So nothing I say applies to everybody. And I'll try to, similar to Ryan, talk about the range of options that are still available. This certainly has been a year like no other. For those of you that are seniors in high school or your parents, transfer students that are either in college right now or maybe took a break in this past year, as many people did. You know, the entire process this year has been very much delayed, as you have had incredible challenges just figuring out how to get through the day-to-day in the midst of this pandemic, and never mind figuring out, you know, what college you want to go to and how to access information about that. Some of you might have had very limited support that you would usually get from your school counselors and other programs providing support to you. That's been harder to access, particularly if you've been in a hybrid situation or strictly remote. So we recognize at the college level that this has been a challenge. And a recent survey showed that most, not all, but let me just say many of the private colleges in Massachusetts are still open and accepting applications. We did a recent survey and I myself was very surprised at how many are still accepting applications. Colleges, frankly, that in a more typical year, I don't know if the word normal will ever apply again, but in a more typical year pre-pandemic, colleges that typically would not still be accepting applications are still accepting this year. So it has been a year of delays all around. Colleges are very understanding of the situation that everyone is in and how challenging and difficult it has been. We're trying to be as absolutely open and flexible and hands-on with you as we can be. Now, that is not to say that many of the more elite and selective colleges, such as the Harvards of the world, Amherst, Williams, those types of institutions, they actually had a very different experience this year and were inundated with applications, way more than they have ever had in the past. So for schools like that at the very elite level, it's unlikely that there's still openings there. Potentially for a transfer student, it would be worth checking out. But for students looking into their first year of college as freshmen, there's not likely to be many opportunities at that level. However, the majority of colleges in Massachusetts are not those elite schools. And from small schools like Dean, where we have about 1,200 students, to the large universities like Northeastern and BU, there may still be some opportunities, and it might be limited. So for example, if you wanted to be in the engineering school at Northeastern University, that might not be available, but another program might still have some opportunities in a particular program. I know Boston University posted that they are still accepting transfers, but I believe that they're full for freshmen. So it's absolutely worth contacting the school of your dreams or anyone that you're interested in. If it's not clear from their website, if they're still accepting applications, get in touch with them, find out if they are. Do not assume that it's too late, and definitely get on it as soon as you can. There's also a great resource, and the website, Julie, maybe you could type it in for me for NACAC. So it's nacacnet.org. And that collects from around the country. So if you're interested in leaving Massachusetts, or if we have anybody on the webinar tonight who are from outside Massachusetts, then the NACAC, which is the National Association of Admissions and College Counselors. I didn't get the order right. But anyway, it's the big Admissions National Association. And they do a survey every year, and that has already started. There are many schools on there. It will continue to update. So that's a great resource if you want to see what's happening. On that website as well, and certainly to check in with colleges that you're interested in, is availability for financial aid, whether or not that's still available from institutional funds as well as federal and state funds. And I know Clantha is going to talk more about that, so I'm not going to steal her thunder. But there are still some opportunities for financial aid. The other thing that's on that site, or is important for you to ask if you're considering going to be a resident student on a college campus. So is housing still available? And again, many colleges still have housing available. They have not filled their freshman class yet. And that's another thing that that NACAC site might show you. I think it's nacacnet.org, Julie. But you can double check it. So there's still lots of options available. Ryan had also mentioned about the different modalities. You know, Dean College has made the decision to be strictly in person in the fall. Many, particularly smaller private colleges, have made the decision to go in person. We will be on campus. We will not be online, so you will not be in a mixture in a hybrid situation. But different colleges are doing different things. So another good question to ask, but more and more colleges, particularly in the private sector, have come out and said they will be in person in the fall. So that's really good news. And then Ryan mentioned the vaccine decision. And at Dean College, we just made the decision and put the announcement out this week that we will be requiring the vaccine. So that is a consideration depending on which side of the vaccine situation you're on. We, have had very little negative feedback about that. Most people are happy that they will be coming into an environment that will be very safe, but certainly a question to ask. I do think that while many colleges have already stated their policy, just as many and maybe more colleges have not made that final decision yet. So it's something that if that's important to you, and you're not vaccinated yet, then you want to pay attention to see what their policies are going to be. So I think that's the highlights from the privates. I don't want to repeat much of what Ryan has said applies to the private sector as well. But the good news is more than ever before, the opportunities for this fall are still here. And we strongly encourage you to not miss the opportunity to attend college and get on it, and give colleges a call, contact admissions offices, contact financial aid offices if you need help, if you need guidance, if the things that you would normally get perhaps from your school counselor that's hard to reach. Colleges are very happy to help you. We're making calls to school counseling offices every day to help students out. So there's a team of people ready to partner with you and make sure that you're able to achieve your higher education opportunities. And with that, I'll turn it over to, is it, Julie, I'll let you decide who's next. Is it Clantha? Yeah.
Yes. It's me. Thank you very much, Iris. And good evening, everyone. Happy that you are with us this evening. And hopefully we can give you or leave you with information that will help you make that next step, take that next step, or make your final decisions. And my message to you tonight is, if nothing else, we want you to know that financial aid is available to help you with college. And the one thing that you must do to help us help you is to complete that FAFSA. So even if your plans are not yet finalized, it's a good idea to complete the FAFSA so that when you are ready, we are ready. And that FAFSA is the instrument that helps all of us, all of the schools that you might be considering, the public colleges and universities, the independent colleges and universities in Massachusetts. It allows them to help determine what kinds of programs are available to you and how they may get those resources to you. I'm going to give you just kind of a high level overview of financial aid. And one of the things is to make certain that you understand that it is your key to getting the aid that you need for your college expenses. And also, we've tried to simplify that process so that you're not having to complete different applications for every institution. That FAFSA is the one single application that will help open doors for your future. And although you may be aware that institutions have had deadlines that have already passed, it's really never too late. Maybe if you are applying at this point, you might have missed an opportunity for some type aid if you had your eyes set on a special scholarship or something like that. But there is plenty of other resources available to you. Keeping in mind that there's also a later deadline for state financial aid programs, which currently is May 1st. And guess what? That's happening in a day or so, right? But because we've had so many challenges over the year, we may be announcing that we will extend that May 1st deadline to allow students who are making plans to make decisions to go to college and to make sure that there is some assistance for you. Financial aid, as many of you know, comes in various forms. At the federal, state, and institutional levels, there are scholarships, grants, work study, and of course, loans. But in the public higher ed system, a ton of tuition waivers that might help reduce your cost of attendance. So keep those things in mind. At the federal level, one program I want to kind of talk about just a little bit to make a joke of is work study. Because we were all remote in the last year, that probably did not get used too much. And Ryan and Iris can tell you more about that. But looking towards the future, that's probably an opportunity for many of you to help fund your costs. But there are grants, Pell Grant, SEOG, and we don't like to think of loans, but as a last resort, if you need the help and you're willing to make that investment in your education, a loan may be what ties up your future. So don't be afraid to look into those kinds of opportunities. And also talk with your financial aid advisors so that they can help you see through what's available and what's the best approach for you. The bottom line is that you must complete that FAFSA in order to get started. And I'm advocating for you to do that now, even if you may not make your decision until July or August. That first step has been taken. So that means that the institutions are waiting on you. But let me tell you a little bit about Massachusetts. Over the last couple of years, we have seen quite a bit of an investment in financial aid for students. In fact, for this past academic year, Massachusetts has appropriated more money in financial aid than we've seen in 3 decades, 30 years. And the important news is next year looks even more promising. So what does that mean for you? It means that the state of Massachusetts, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, governor, the legislators are looking at your future and trying to make certain that there are funds available to help you with that cost of attendance. So you don't have to struggle with who's going to help me or there are no funds available. Yes, there are. And I'm going to tell you about just a few of those that are offered at the state level. Our primary grant program is called the MASS grant. That's the program that has a May 1st deadline. What that means is if you have financial need, if you're coming from a family that has some financial challenges or what have you, that MASS grant is probably there and available to help you. It's a program that, regardless of whether you attend a public institution or private institution in the state, there's an opportunity for you to submit that FAFSA and see if that money is available to you. But MASS grant is only one of several programs. If you are looking at the public higher ed system, there's what we call the MASS Grant Plus, and that is money to help you afford the cost of your tuition, fees, and your book expenses. What that does is it helps to ensure that for those basic costs, there's going to be money available to you. So all of our community colleges and the 9 state universities participate in that program. And guess what? There's going to be even more of that money available next year as well. Let me tell you about a program that's available if you are thinking about one of the private colleges that Iris represents, and that's called the Gilbert Matching Grant Program. $2,500 a year doesn't sound like much, but it could make that difference. It could seal that cap on you being able to afford your education at one of the private institutions. And this is money that the Commonwealth of Massachusetts is making available to you. But there are other opportunities as well. If you happen to be a student who has had to be engaged in foster care, there are 2 programs there, a foster child grant, which awards up to $6,000 a year for students. It's awarded as a last dollar scholarship. You can go anywhere and receive that money, public or private, even out of state schools, but we don't want you going out of state. There's also the adopted and foster fee assistance, and that provides a full tuition and fee scholarship or grant for you if you attend a public college in Massachusetts. Just one of those programs that you may not be aware of, but if you've been in the foster care system at any time or were adopted through the Department of Children and Families, there are resources available. One of my favorite programs is called the Massachusetts High Demand Scholarship. You know, Massachusetts wants you to go to college, get that education so you can come out and fill all of those jobs that are just waiting for you. But there's some fields that have more of a need for employees than others. The High Demand Scholarship helps us to get students in the right fields, such as STEM or the health professions, so that once you complete your program of study, you are able to secure a position in a Massachusetts company or with a Massachusetts company that helps our economy to continue to grow. And then there's all kinds of tuition waivers that will give you that discount on your tuition at the public institutions, need-based tuition waivers. But one of my favorite tuition waivers that we don't think of as a waiver, the John and Abigail Adams Scholarship Program. We are spending about $16 million on that program. So for those of you who are taking that MCAS exams, waiting on that letter that says you are a John and Abigail Adams Scholar, go see Ryan. He has a spot for you at Worcester State or any other of the public institutions. There's just so many wonderful opportunities, and all you need to do is get that FAFSA completed, spend some time on the phone or by calling the agencies, looking at our websites, sending in something, an email or a chat for assistance, and we will help you to identify the resources that are available at the federal level. Remember, I mentioned Pell, I mentioned work study, SEOG, student loans. At the state level, Mass Grant Plus, High Demand Scholarship, Foster Child Grant, not to mention the scholarships and grants that are available at the institution. A lot of our institutions have their own funds just waiting to hand it out to you and help you with your future. So let us help you. Our website, mass.edu, mass.edu. Take a look at what we have. We have a way for you to submit an email to us or put in a phone call or what have you. We are there to help out. Thank you.
Thank you, Clantha. And Robert.
All right. Thank you, everybody. And great to see you on this evening. I have the honor to be on this distinguished group with my colleagues here. And you've heard from the higher ed, you've heard from the opportunities that exist with public higher ed. You've heard about private higher ed opportunities that are still available. You've heard about how to finance it. I'm really here to talk to you a little bit about the support, because we know it's never easy to do these applications or FAFSA completion on your own. A lot of times there's a lot of language that you may be unfamiliar with if you're a high school student looking to go to college, or you may be a returning adult looking to further your education. But a lot of times as you're proceeding through these applications, they seem overwhelming and you get stuck and you don't know where to turn. And that's where my organization and others like us come in. I'll give you a quick overview of the Gear Up program, but it's really an example of the types of supports that are out there in the Commonwealth. And first, I just want to thank the folks at MEFA who always do a phenomenal job with presentations like this and offer great support. The theme of this is really partnership, because you're looking at state institutions, higher ed institutions, private institutions, public institutions. All these organizations are coming together to knit together this net to make sure that no one falls through the cracks with regards to support and opportunity. So that's what we're here to represent. But to give you a little sense of who I am and what we do at Gear Up, we're a federally funded program. We are run out of the Office of Student Financial Assistance. Dr. Clantha McCurdy is my delightful supervisor. So I have the honor of not only seeing her on the call, but also working with her hand in hand. And we work closely with our partners in higher ed. Ryan at Worcester State, Iris at Dean. We send many of our students to their campuses, and they're fantastic with regards to supporting them. So Gear Up as an example of support systems out there. Our mission is to help first-generation low-income students prepare for higher education. And we're in 16 schools throughout the Commonwealth. We serve about 6,300 students, and we serve students from grades 7 through first year in college. And again, we're just one example. We may be in a district or a school that you attend, or we may not be. There may be other organizations such as Talent Search, Upward Bound Math and Science. There are a variety of federally funded programs and private programs. So I just want to make sure you're aware that regardless of where you're at in the Commonwealth, there are people just like myself and my team who are designated to help support you, not to mention your guidance counselors and the many professionals in your school, your teachers who want to help you succeed. So oftentimes it's just as simple as you flagging them and identifying yourself. Normally you could go up to them if this were normal circumstances, but it's not. But I know many of you who are in school, you may be on Zooms with them, as we're often invited into the classrooms, the virtual classrooms now, to speak to many of students about how do they complete their FAFSA? How do they complete a college application? If they're in the process of doing so, where have they gotten stuck? Really unraveling the mystery of all this is what we do. And again, we're just one example of the many that are out there. There's also been a tremendous push because of the impact of COVID. You're seeing a lot of state entities. The Department of Early and Secondary Education recently launched a campaign called Worth It, or You're Worth It, essentially. You might have seen some of the billboards where they're really detailing how we don't want you to overlook the fact that you're worth taking the hour or so to invest in your future, complete that FAFSA, as everyone's been saying, so you can get the dollars that are available. It's late, but it's not too late, because normally some folks would say, oh my goodness, it's late spring. I don't know if I can get in or go anywhere. Well, you've got all kinds of options. Community colleges, as Iris mentioned, many of the institutions, private, are extending their opportunities with regards to admissions. So now you may just need the support. And that's where you turn. And again, MEFA is a tremendous resource. As Julie represents them, they've helped us put on presentations and address this. As Clantha mentioned, the Office of Student Financial Assistance, I know just this past weekend, there was a big FAFSA campaign, and it was well attended with many families that, again, people might consider it late in the game, but here we are. I really look at it like the FAFSA and the college completion season has really been extended. It's almost like it's just been drawn out. And my team is planning on assisting students and families well into the summer, quite honestly, because we know that community colleges and other institutions are extending their deadlines because they are empathetic to the impact that COVID is having on families. And they want to make sure that the traditional timelines are not a barrier. Some examples of institutions all around the Commonwealth that I thought of when I think of support for college and career readiness are in Boston, American Student Assistance is a phenomenal organization, ASA. They're a great organization that helps people unravel the FAFSA questions that they have. Mass EdCo in the Worcester area does tremendous work, especially they really focus in on adult learners also. So if you're someone who's thinking about returning to a higher education, don't think that you're being left out. There are a lot of programs that are designed to help them out. A lot of programs designed to help veterans. So regardless of where you're coming from, there are opportunities for you to get the help you need. As you head further west into the Springfield, Holyoke area, Valley Opportunity Council is another organization we work closely with to make sure students get the support that they need. And then down in the South Coast area, we work closely with an organization called Seven Hills. Once again, they're experts in this domain with regards to supporting students. These are just examples, again, no matter where you are in the Commonwealth, no matter how large a city or how small a village or wherever you're at, there's someone out there. And then obviously the virtual world, it's virtually unlimited. So you can get all kinds of support no matter where you are from a variety of resources, because at the end of the day, we all on this call, but then literally the hundreds and hundreds of people behind us, whether they're on a college campus, at a state institution, we're all focused on doing one thing, and that's making sure that every student has the opportunity to complete a FAFSA, complete an application, and get the educational opportunity that they desire, because it's just that simple. We do not want COVID to be an excuse or a barrier that prevents you from realizing your dreams. And that's ultimately what we're here to help you with. So I'll wrap up by saying I'm very optimistic because this pandemic and this crisis has revealed the opportunity for collaboration, which you're seeing tonight. So I'm grateful to be here. So thank you. Oh,
thank you so much, Robert. And I put, and Ryan put a few other URLs in the chat. And the new statewide website, mass.gov/financial aid, has a lot of what Robert was just talking about, a lot of organizations that can help you complete the FAFSA. So that's another comprehensive site that you can look at. So I'll just open it up to see if there are any questions that you can put in the chat or the question and answer. And while I don't see any at the moment, I guess I would just ask the panelists if there's anything else that you thought of while someone else was talking, or any other thoughts, and while we wait and see if there are any questions here. But this was a lot of terrific information.
Yeah, Julie, I'll jump in real quick because I just want to clarify. We spoke a couple of times about May 1. And May 1, has often been decision day. And if you didn't make your decision by May 1 for schools that require a deposit, you didn't submit your deposit yet, you were out of luck. And I wanted to clarify that at many schools, May 1 is getting extended. It may not be an official announcement on websites, but don't necessarily assume that it's too late. So I just wanted to really clarify that and make sure people understood that, although it's only April 29th, and you still have 2 days. 2 days is pretty quick. So don't let May 1 scare you. And for any school that says they're still accepting applications, they're also extending their deposit date or commitment date for you as well. So, and even Clantha mentioned that the state is looking into possibly extending that date even for Mass Grant, which is not something that happens very often. So that was a great piece of news. So I just wanted to make sure that everybody understood and didn't get too nervous about May 1.
Thank you. We do have a question. So and anyone who would like to answer this, can you touch upon the pros and cons of federal loans?
I'll jump in on that first. I'm sure others would like to as well. But since 85% of the students that attend Dean College do have a student loan, I'm very familiar with them. And so I think that's a wonderful question, and it's a wonderful way to pose the question on pros and cons, because there certainly are pros and cons. So let me talk about the pros first. There is something called responsible borrowing. And for many students, to get them, you might be qualifying for scholarships, you might be qualifying for grants, but in many cases, that's not going to cover the full cost. And if you haven't had the opportunity to save much money for college, then here's your opportunity to, rather than having saved it before, you'll pay it later. So either way, the money's coming out of pocket eventually, but it's a way for you to access your education and really make that investment in yourself. And as long as you're not overreaching and borrowing way out of your comfort zone or way out of a realistic opportunity to repay it, based on what your goals are. And this is where it gets a little bit tricky. So, what's your goal? Do you want to be a preschool teacher? Do you want to work in the business world? Do you want to be an engineer? Do you want to be an astronaut? All of those types of careers have very different salary projections. So if you want to be a preschool teacher, you probably don't want to borrow too much money because you're not going to start out making too much money. And even through your career, it's not a high paying profession. It's a very important profession. And I think it's never been more valued than it has been in this age of COVID. But it does not pay well, versus you want to be an engineer, you can afford to borrow quite a bit because engineers make very healthy salaries. And there's lots of good information on some college websites, a lot of national websites that can give you some good information about what's a reasonable amount for you to borrow. And call the college financial aid offices directly, where you can really talk about your personal situation and what your concerns are, and they can really talk you through it and give you your own pros and cons for your family. The cons are really, to me, there's very few cons. The cons are really overreaching, you know, borrowing $100,000, not borrowing $20,000. The federal student loan program will allow you, if you're in a 4-year program, to borrow up to $27,500, I believe it is, with some of that earning interest. That's very manageable to pay back for almost everybody. And the horror stories, if you will, that you hear from the media all the time are students that are going way beyond that are getting into private lenders and borrowing way beyond what's realistic for them. And so that's where you want to have those conversations with the college financial aid offices, who can really help you think it through, plan, you know, not just for your freshman year or your first year, but down the road all the way to graduation, and figure out what your plan should be all the way through. And do you have graduate school in your future? You know, back to what are your long-term goals, and thinking about, will you be borrowing for graduate school? So you really want to look at it very holistically. And if you have a good plan going in, there are no cons. It's the lack of planning that's the con. So not getting the information is when you get yourself into trouble. So I'll stop there, and I'm sure some of my colleagues might have some other things to add to that.
I was just going to quickly say, I don't know what else I could add to that, Iris. Responsible borrowing and looking at loans as an investment in your future. So you've summed it up quite nicely, but I'm sure Ryan might want to offer some additional comments.
You know, the only thing I think I would add is, just like Iris said, loans are a part of a lot of families' financial plans for college. So when we get the idea in our head that student loans are a way in which a student can invest in themselves, you're borrowing some money to pay for college, so that when the 2 or 4 years are over, you have a credential that the majority of other folks don't have. And so you're investing in yourself, you're changing yourself, and you're borrowing those funds to do that. When you think about pros and cons of loans, though, then you start to think about what's the benefit of that loan versus that other loan, right? Because any of us could walk into our banks right now and say, I want to borrow a loan. And you know what? They're going to find a loan to offer you because they like to loan money. But you want to find the loan that's best for you. And Iris said it, and I'll say it again, these federal loans, which is usually the direct loan program from the federal government, have some of the best repayment terms. They don't get repaid until after you leave college. They have a grace period after college, where not all other loans do. They have some of the lowest interest rates out there. The interest rate right now for undergraduate direct loans is 2.75%. If you think of all the ways that a family can borrow money to pay for college and other things, 2.75% is pretty darn good. So those are all of the pros, right? The things that's about this federal loan that says, if I'm going to borrow money and I'm going to invest in myself, I want to do so with the best loan out there. And those are pretty good pros for that one. The only con, I'm overusing that term. I'm reaching like Iris. The only con is perhaps there might be a better way for your family to borrow, depending on what your family's situation is. For instance, if you own a home and have equity in your home, and you can borrow against that equity with a home equity loan, perhaps that interest rate would be lower than the federal direct loan interest rate of 2.75%. So for some families, maybe a different type of borrowing is better for you. But in many, many families' cases, you really can't beat the federal direct loan. Additionally, federal direct loan comes with the possibility of having subsidized interest, where the interest, at least while you're in college, it doesn't accrue. It's a 0% interest while you're in college. So there, in many ways, if you're going to borrow, if that's a way that you're investing in yourself, the federal loans are very often a really good tool to do so for many families.
That's great. Thank you.
And Julie, let me just add one more tiny thing. If we have parents here, the student loans that we've been talking about a lot, that you can borrow up to the 27,000, it literally is a student loan in the student name. So for parents, you have absolutely no responsibility to that loan. So that's probably the biggest pro for parents, is even if your student had a little trouble paying the loan, nobody's coming after you. So it's strictly in the student's name, and hopefully you can help your student be a good borrower, and figure out what their responsibilities are. But I think that's very helpful to parents who might feel some pressure of taking on debt. Maybe you have debt already for other purposes and don't want to add to that debt. This would be strictly in the student's name.
That's great. Thank you. Then we do have one other question. And I know, Robert, your team works with so many students. So maybe I'll start with you on this one. What do you think about suggesting mid-year or January admissions opportunities to a student?
Yeah, I saw that, and I'm going to sort of take it and run with it, but I could be out of context. So suggesting those to students. So this is where you really look at, and I think Iris did a nice job framing out, this is an individual decision. So you're going to sit down and you're going to speak to a family, and I'm going to give an example. So let's say we've had several students in our Gilbert program because of COVID, maybe a family member or parent got sick, and that student who may have been striving and on target to go to college in the fall, now they're confronted with a real economic hardship where they are taking, maybe they are working a job that's really literally supporting the family at this point until that parent recovers. And so maybe they can go part-time. That one of our options would be, what are the different opportunities for you to get engaged and keep that learning happening? Because we know that once you disconnect, it's oftentimes very difficult for a student to re-engage. Plus, your learning does decrease if you're not utilizing it. So, but then we sit down and we talk to that student, and let's say that they find it to be something that they can't do. Maybe they've had to travel somewhere else for other reasons. And so if that's the case, then we would look at all the options and then determine, okay, if fall enrollment is the best opportunity for you. And I think Ryan did a nice job framing it out, where you want to look at all the different levels, because there are a lot of levels in between delaying enrollment. There are a lot of strategies in between that. But if you look at all the options and that's the best opportunity, I would also reach out to that institution, because I'm sure some of our folks here who work with them, there might be some way of enrolling and deferring, and there may be all kinds of strategies to really just say, I intend to enroll. I'm encountering this difficult challenge right now. I'd like to reserve a spot, or I'd like to get my package all set. So that's along the lines of what our Gilbert advisors and many other TRIO and professionals in this space would do, is we'd really drill down and not just take this is what I'm thinking about doing. We'd really get at, tell us more, tell us why, tell us how you got there. Have you thought about this? Let's look at all the options that could fit you for the best solution. That's how I would respond to it based on what I was asked. Thanks.
That's great. That's terrific. And I don't know if anyone else has anything else to share there.
Nope, I had 2 students asking for a defer just today. We've got our first 2. So one of them is just a little hesitant about starting, and one has some medical concerns and still feeling a little shaky because of COVID. We're being as lenient as we possibly can with deferring. So we've got our first 2 today. It's happening already. And I saw the question in the chat, Julie, about what do we think about mid-year and January admissions opportunities, which sort of goes along with what Robert was saying as well. That absolutely is another option. I know many of the private institutions will open up spots for January typically. For most institutions, January is that second semester. To give you an idea of Dean, for example, we'll expect to enroll about 400 students this fall, and we'll generally enroll about 50 in January. So it's a much smaller group. There's generally not as much space available. Sometimes, and that would be the thing to check on, if you're looking to be a resident student, there may or may not be housing available in January. So that will vary from one institution to another. But typically, many schools will have some openings. I find that the more elite schools may not offer admission mid-year. So it might be a little bit more difficult there, but most other institutions, and I'll let Ryan speak to it, but I believe the public institutions as well will admit students for January as well. Or you might feel like, I'm not ready to start in this September, but I don't need to wait a whole other year. I just want to wait till January. So deferring that one semester rather than a full year is also an option at many schools.
Oh, that's so great. Well, I thank you all so much. This was terrific information. As I mentioned, we have recorded this, so I will send the recording to all of you who have participated this evening. And I would say, please share it with others if you think others would find this useful. And we at MEFA are also going to share this widely. So thank you all for joining us, for your questions, and panelists. Thank you so much.
Thank
Really
you,
wonderful.
Julie. Thanks,
Night.
everybody.
Bye-bye.